Hi, I'd like to tell you about my friend Joe. Some early stuff from back in Washington Heights. Now, if you're going to do early, I guess you have to start with a standard baby picture. And this one's fine. But this one's better. You see, by the time he could stand up, Joe was performing. And anyone who saw him perform just knew instantly that this kid had the magic. By 1960, he was already a showbiz veteran, doing regular spots on the old Route 66 show.
Everybody who tried to work for Charlotte Yvonne.
Well, doesn't anybody ever throw Jean in the water?
Nobody can do that.
Hey, you.
And just a few years after that, when he was 14, no, that's not Joe in the top hat. That's some 18-year-old kid named Davy Jones, playing the role of the Artful Dodger in the 1963 production of Oliver. You see, Joe was Davy's understudy. Now, it was around that time that Joe's mom decided they were going to move north. Well, to the northern tip of the Bronx anyway. A few blocks north of the last stop on the number 1 train, in nearly suburban Riverdale. In one of those new attached homes right across the street from Van Cortlandt Park. Joe and his mom and his grandparents lived on the top floor. Aunt Louise and Uncle Marty and their son, Big Ralph, that's Big Ralph, lived below them. And the ground level was this combination, everybody's spare kitchen and everybody's spare bedroom. It was around this time that Joe and I met, through Big Ralph, who I'd known for years. And we just started hanging out. Joe didn't make a big thing about his showbiz background. But before I knew it, we were hanging out at Durwood Kirby's place on Central Park South. Durwood's son was in the same band as Joe. More about that in a minute. And we were playing basketball with this kid named Manny. You might know him as Emmanuel Axe. He went to the same school as Joe, Lincoln Square Academy for kids in show business. Joe was the most popular kid in that school. He had a wider range of talents than anyone else. He was a star among stars. And he was the nicest guy in the world. So his star just kept rising. He fronted a band called the Live Wires, made up of kids from the school, and it wasn't long before they'd recorded 2 sides for Boom Records. Listen in.
I'm going out tonight to find a girl for me that's right. Stay out of my sight. I'll give you a chance to make amends. You didn't try. This will be the end. I've had enough. I just won't lie.
I like the B-side even better.
And they seem so happy when I'm not around. Keep it to yourself. Hey, hey, now keep it to yourself. Hey, hey, now keep it to yourself. Don't come telling me, baby, don't come telling me.
Joe told me that 45 sold more than 100,000 copies, but the Live Wires never saw a red cent of royalties. That's how it was in those days. Young artists got shafted all the time. Well, about 2 years later, Joe was recording his first solo record at the legendary Bell Sound Studios in New York. 2 sessions. I remember Hendrix used the studio we were in immediately before the first session, and Jimmy Cliff used it immediately after the second session. We were sandwiched between musical royalty. The song was called Planet Ride, and it had commercial success written all over it. Just listen. And there was a great B-side. We were never told who the writer was, but, well, give a listen, and then take a wild guess. Planet Ride never got released or even mastered. Joe's mom sensed there was going to be a repeat of what had happened with Boom Records, so she bought the master tape outright. And it's been sitting in a box for decades. Hey, maybe someone could... If you knew Joe, you knew he had two great needs in his life, two passions: the need to perform and the need to be home, which is tough when you're performing and spending a lot of time on the road like he was. Home meant family. And for Joe, family started with a woman he could trust and depend on. Now, back at Lincoln Square Academy, that was Wendy, the love of his life. But most high school romances end after high school. And not long after Joe and Wendy broke up, I got this call from Joey on the road, somewhere in Florida, I guess. And he said, Gayzur, I met this girl and she's fantastic. I swear she's the one. That must have been back in the summer of 1970. And by that December, Joe and Lori were married. They lived in the building right next to his mom's place for a while and had their first son, Joe, in 1972. And right from the get-go, Joe began passing along the good things that had been passed on to him. You see, that's the measure of a successful life. Whether you've passed along the good stuff that was passed on to you, and you haven't passed along the bad stuff. For a while, I was spending a week every winter down in Florida, hanging around with Joe during the day and seeing him perform locally at night, and after which we'd go home. The last time I spoke to Joey on the phone, I asked him, Joe, how you doing? And he said, Richie, the doctors tell me I'm doing good. I'm getting better. And so as soon as I'm all better, you're coming down here. Okay. He didn't want me to know. So I didn't. Officially. What I do know now is that Joe went through the toughest part of his life near the end of his life. But through it all, he kept passing along the good things that had been passed along to him. You see, my friend Joe had a very successful life. To Joe, salute.